Hey, it's live. Well, good evening and welcome to the October 2016 Omaha Linux Users Group. Yay! Da, da, da. I have not had any chance to make a list of announcements as compared to last month's stellar list of new things. And my feed reader has at least over 1,000 entries in it that I have not been able to go through. So. Has there been any kernel news recently that you've heard, Aaron?
4.8's out.
Oh, it is out?
Yes.
Okay, well, there you go. 4.8's out.
And it has support for the i3.
Oh, cool. I remember them talking about that. So it's all native then.
Supposedly.
I wonder if there's a component for the video portion.
Has anybody tried the new Raspbian with Pixel?
That's what that was.
That is what that is.
Yeah. I loaded it last night. There's some problems with it.
Opportunities.
Specifically dealing with OpenVPN and the config files that it has loaded. Awesome.
Cool.
No, not really. Remember I said it took me 2.5 hours to put this together? It took me 2 hours and 28 minutes to figure out what was wrong with the config file.
Oh. Sounds like a server config I was going through recently.
I did. It gave me nothing, and I don't know if it complained to somebody else.
Okay. All right then. Well,
that's what we're doing.
Oh, using a Raspberry Pi as an OpenVPN server. That's awesome.
Which actually you could erase the first 7 words, and it would still mean almost the same thing.
Oh, good.
You can use this. You can do this on it.
All right. Sweet.
Cool.
I'm easy.
Don't tell me what.
I'm Tom Fritz. I'm
Tom,
operations engineer at Google. That's all right. John didn't introduce me. Most of you know me. So we're going to talk about using Raspberry Pi as an OpenVPN server. I did this. I moved all my DNS servers at home. Yes, I run DNS servers at home. And I decided to put OpenVPN on that because I got tired of listening to this machine in the basement. Yeah. So, and my wife got tired of it too. She got mad at me for complaining that the filters were getting plugged up with kitty litter dust. So everybody knows what OpenVPN is, right? I mean, generally speaking, right? Okay.
With me so far.
You're with me so far. So it was started in 2001. It's an open source project application. Since 2001, they ported it to a lot of different platforms. You can get it for Windows. There's a couple different Mac OS X implementations of it. There are 1 or 2 decent Android implementations, and there's one for iOS, I think. That isn't too bad. As far as Linux, FreeBSD, NetBSD, I mean, anything you think of, you can find a file that basically it works. It has 2 modes that it runs in. Client server, and you can use UDP or TCP. If you're using your cell phone and you're tethering it, I would recommend you use TCP. Because you'll drop packets a little bit with that if you're moving or something. UDP actually works really good.
That's just because of the delay in some of the cellular protocols.
Right. I mean, you got three-way handshake going on in TCP, so there's a lot more error correction going on. A little more tolerant to drop packets. Some of the advantages, I mean, you only have to have one port open on your firewall, and you can run this on anything. When we get to the server config, the default port, I believe, is 1194. You can set it up to do UDP or TCP. You can run multiple instances of the server. It's monolithic, so you can, if you're running this for a business application or you have a lot of people connecting to it, you can run multiple instances, run them on different ports, and get pretty poor man's load balance. There's some other ways to do it with IP tables that I wanted to get into. You run it all on the same port, on the same machine, and have it round robin on the back end, two servers running on the same machine. We did that as using IP tables and had 8 instances of OpenVPN running for a commercial offering that we had for a while.
Oh.
Too bad. We limited it to about 50 connections per
child,
server.
essentially.
Yeah, it was running because it's right about that point you start having problems. They've been saying they're going to have a multi-threaded version of it at some point.
Question.
Yeah.
So when it says UDP or TCP, but you can run the multiple configs of it, so you then run like 1196 and 1196 TCP and UDP?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, you have to use a different configuration.
Right.
Other than that, yeah, you can do anything like that. What we did is we had 8 ports, contiguous ports on the back end that it round robin to from the front end. And
so there was only one connect for them.
one on the outside, outward.
Okay.
So, yeah, and I think we ran on 443. At the time, we were trying to defeat deep packet inspection, which this will fail because although it's TLS SSL type traffic, it doesn't look like it to a packet inspector. So, you can run it in a tap mode bridging or in a tunnel mode or tuned. If you want to be able to do Windows networking from remote, you can use a tap. Don't really recommend that. It is a fair amount of bandwidth, so you get kind of neat performance. I have used this to stream securely to my tablet from a Plex server just to see if it would work.
It does.
And it does. And you don't have to like set it up through the Plex Pass stuff. You don't have to give access to your server from to other people.
You're not forwarding the port
because it's not forwarding. Yeah, it's not as it does traditionally. So the way I prepped this little pie is newest Raspbian image followed up with a update and an upgrade. Other than that, I haven't done anything. So we are going to be flying by the seat of our pants here to see if this works. So as far as installation, did anybody have any questions before I go forward? There's a lot you can do with this, and I'm not going to go into a lot of it. So if you have questions, ask. So what we're going to do here, when you do the install, sudo apt-get install OpenVPN, it by default puts the EasyRSA, which is a key manager, in a funky spot. It actually puts it in user share. Every distro that I've looked at so far puts it someplace different. A lot of the documentation you will find will mention EasyRSA 1.0 and 2.0. Now it's all 2.0. I haven't seen the distro yet that has the other. So if you do run into documentation that has that reference, you don't know why. Let's switch over here. I know you guys will scream, but can't have it. I was mentioning group. So there aren't very many dependencies for this.
Was that a Pi 3?
It is a Pi 3. I'm not overclocking it. We may regret that. I probably will not be able to complete the entire installation with this. All the key generation will work just swimmingly until we get to the DH key pairs.
Is it a Dev random or entropy issue?
Yeah, and it ran last night for over an hour. And it still hadn't finished a 2048.
Wow.
Yeah. So
for your demo, could you use 512 or that software?
We can try that if you want to see what happens. It doesn't care. I don't think you have to change anything. big. We'll have to look at that.
Just thinking the amount of math.
The pies are actually pretty cool. I put heat sinks on this because I was actually using this one as a video server. Ocean Eye, you see that? And I overclocked it. So if we jump into, let's
Like an old
see, VPN.
8046 cooler with the fan on top.
Yeah. So it has this update resolve conf. You can look at this. Essentially, what this is it looks at the DHCP
server and then tax.
Yeah. So the thing is, you don't need this. I'm actually going to have it push this to us, push command in the config file. So in essence, this isn't needed.
So you just change it to like dash off or something like that?
I don't use it.
Oh, okay.
It's an include, essentially.
Okay.
So I'm going to copy, let's see, user, share. So now we have our CRSA directory. Everything you need to build this is in here. Back to here. So a couple things you want to do. So you want to change at least these two options. If you don't change the export ECRSA equals and put a path in there, it will write anything that you generate with ECRSA, the keys, to God only knows where. I mean, I haven't tried it with it not set on. This way, it just automatically puts it in a directory in the ECRSA directory called keys, right? So, recommendation: when you do this, if you're going to keep your own CA and do this,
Copy it off.
I might actually install it on a different flash drive, an SD card, and actually only boot it up when you want to transfer keys and things like that, and make new keys for people. Because running it on the server that you're actually serving traffic with. Export key size, you can set that. That has a lot to do with the keys that are generated, obviously. When we do the DigiHome keys, we actually specify that. So these are some of the variables that you can actually set in the bars.
Oh, that's
so by default, this is what it is. To make it easier on yourself, you can change it in here so that every time you generate, say, keys, you don't have to override this.
that would save me time.
They used to hide this in the earlier versions, and deeper into it took forever to figure out where it was because they didn't spell it out. This last line, this is the one that I figured out you have to add.
Key alt names?
Yeah, if it's not there, I'll show you what it does. It'll give us an error. I'm back here. So there's the first line, right? By default, it just runs from
whatever working directory.
From wherever you happen to be, which could be bad. Now, you don't have to put it there. You can put it anywhere. Down. There isn't a whole lot you need to change here. So this is a significant difference. It used to ship with it set to 1024. You want to try setting it to 512 just to see if it. Never mind. Okay, we'll do that later. So here's another. You can set when they expire.
So 10 years.
10 years. If you have this Pi for 10 years,
well, you may have to move it to another system.
Right. There's only one more thing that might be interesting to set. This last thing where it says common name. You can set this up so you use one profile for every device that connects, right? You use the exact same keys, everything. I don't recommend that. It's nice though if you have the same user that has multiple devices and they're using the same key pairs. That way you don't have to set up a separate profile for their tablet, separate profile for that. It does this by default, so you don't really need to set this. So you source it. So there's one other command that's kind of dangerous, and it calls it out here, the clean all. I disabled this on our prod server just because it'll erase everything when you run that. It'll make you cry. That's kind of called out in the next step here. So loads it. It requires you to run the clean all the first time though, for some reason. I don't know why. If you try to build the CA without actually doing that, it will give you an error. So do that.
Okay, before you do that, can you
Sure.
do an ls-la?
Sure.
Maybe it creates. I don't know if it creates a hidden file or.
No, I mean it's created a keys directory.
Okay. Maybe it's just the folder, the directory itself is what's.
Which if you notice up here, it's not there, right?
Yeah.
So as soon as you source bars, then it actually creates a few extra files. Has anybody used ECRSA before to build keys?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
For OpenVPN?
No.
It's actually, you can use it for a lot of other things. This is where you're going to run into the whole. Yeah, I'm not going to bother changing it. So basically, you set up the CA now. You go into keys. You'll have the basics, right? So the next thing around it is we're actually going to build it for the server. Now, the actual command, obviously I mistyped that. It's /build server, and you can give it a name. I think it'll pass it through if you want to. You don't have to. That makes sense. It'll name the key files based on a server name that you pass it.
Oh.
You don't have to do that. I never do. That way it cuts down on ambiguity. When you're copying keys off the server, you don't inadvertently copy something off because you think it's a user's key.
Yeah, for the host name, I'm using usernames. So.
Right. So back.
Change up a folder.
Interesting. So here's the error. I'll let you do this because I don't have that option that I mentioned in the other file or in the reso. Yeah. Although we can try it. It is. I like it. It's going to blow up here sooner or later, because it did last night. Quite some time. So here's the first thing. Almost everybody, the first time they do this, makes a mistake. You don't want to put a challenge password on this. What it will do is it will screw up the actual authentication process when you go to connect, because it's expecting a challenge password.
Yeah. It's like putting a password on an Apache.
Exactly.
Every time you restart Apache, enter the password.
Right. So, cool. So there.
Okay.
Created our cert, our key. All right. So now, next thing, we'll build a user key. There's no trick here except as you go down, it increases on it. I wish this had a pointer, but down in this section, I actually run it, and they actually recommend you do this mostly for Android and iOS clients apparently, to run it through and re-encrypt it with triple DES.
After you've created it?
After you've created the key, you re-encrypt it with triple DES. For some reason, the clients don't work properly unless you do.
Oh.
Yeah. It'll work just fine with a desktop client, but
Okay.
the mobile apps don't work properly. That never used to be the case, so
I wonder if it was just something they want to wrap it around it on the mobile device. The device can
it makes it more resistant to brute force cracking too. I mean, chances of cracking is probably pretty slim. Right. Build key. What was it? User?
Mm-hmm.
Thought it was username. Key pass. And then we'll give it a name.
Call it Steve.
Don't think you have to put a password on this.
No, I don't remember you having to.
Yeah, I think you do. Yeah, for
4
this,
to 1,000.
for this actually you do. It actually runs pretty fast. Really?
Oops.
That's my normal. I don't think you have to do this. Yeah. All right. So now we have right. So we've got our key.
1 and 2.
Yeah,
Difference.
PIMs are there, and then you've got my key, and cert goes along with it. And what we're going to do is run this through triple DES. We don't have to, but this is what they recommended in the guide that I was looking at. I think when we were doing the commercial version of this, we didn't do it, and it worked with mobile devices.
Might be I wonder if it's client based.
It could be the client side. So you're going to have to copy these keys and certs over to the client side. So you have to give them a copy of this. Right? Oops. What I want to do is copy that because I want to. Oop. Really? No. Oh. So.
You got CD keys. You're not in the working directory.
That would help. And password on. Now we have triple DES key.
Very quick.
This is for AES.
Sorry?
This is for AES.
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 Yeah. So, move back. This is where things will fall on its face. We tried to actually build this, the Divi helmet key set. Be here all night. I could try it with 512. I'd have to change the config though to do that. I don't know that we really need to do it. Simply because I'm not going to test against this. I'm going to test against my home server.
Mhm.
All the configs that are on, I'm going to put in here actually from that. So,
And you have to have that built as part of the handshake.
Yes.
Right?
yes.
Okay.
So, yeah. I mean, to do the actual handshake, you need that. The last line on this is basically HMAC, right? Authentication, the TA key. And this is the part that actually makes OpenVPN work so well if you use it at home. It essentially is a denial of service attack preventative. The server won't even talk to somebody who connects to it unless this matches.
Huh.
So, that being said, make sure your time is right on the device you're trying to connect to and from. If they don't match within reasonable drift, it won't connect. Yeah. And that was something that reared its ugly head. I totally forgot about it, and it.
But you don't put.
Right. Yeah, unless you have a real-time clock on it. You don't put what?
No, I'm just thinking because
This is a
it
challenge.
must be the keys that are generated afterwards that you put on your client to connect to do this.
Right, but it's challenge response.
Okay.
So it's going to fail if the times don't match because it uses that.
Right. I'm just comparing it to what I've been doing and trying to see the differences.
You using TA keys, yeah. I mean, it's pretty standard with most. It's standard with most distributions.
Chad may have set it up, and I never saw him do it. So
you can disable it if you want to. I don't recommend that. Like I said, it prevents people that don't have. Now, that being said, if you look at a commercial provider for VPNs that does OpenVPN, they give this out like candy. Everybody knows what it is. But for a home server, it's awesome because hopefully the only people that know what it is are people who actually set accounts. Right?
that's not unlike when I did my syslog, remote syslogging stuff. The certificates are only between the two devices.
Right. So, if you really want me to try to build the keys for that, I can. But I'm telling you,
I believe you.
it wasn't pleasant. I was really surprised. I got done doing the Rezo last night, and
That's mostly because it doesn't have an FPU floating.
yeah, right. And it's using bit of random, and you don't have the luxury of like getting an extra random stuff. So it ran for well over an hour. I mean, I went to the shower, watched TV, came back, and it's still low. So.
Are you supposed to be in keys still, or no? Is OpenSSL Gen key versus OpenVPN Gen key?
Interesting.
Do you have a TV or is that what's
Is it
It's
not
built.
seeing hyphens correctly?
Oh.
Because it was copied from the Mac?
Yes.
Well, they look the same.
They look the same. That's interesting. That definitely is the
Yeah, it's there. It looks like an M dash.
You dropped a dash. I did.
The second time.
When you went to edit, not there.
Dash Gen key.
Add your gen key.
So now we have all the parts except for the last one. And I'll show you what happens. I'll build the H. And we can just here.
Now,
And I don't think it would make a significant difference if we changed.
even if you
size.
did like cat dev random in another terminal to get it out.
Extra, no.
Or
I tried-
SSH into another system and have it feed a bunch of data.
Yeah, so when I was building the key set for my server that's sitting at home, I tried various things to try to speed it up, and I wasted more time. I should just let it run.
It doesn't mean you have to. You could still generate this on another machine and bring it over. So,
Yeah, it doesn't matter where you generate it. You can generate the keys anywhere.
and it doesn't matter architecture-wise because it's just the way that the
It's
keys
just
are
a
made.
text file. Yeah, it's done. So while this plugs away, we'll look at the config file. I don't even have to copy this over. Okay, so it's a couple other things you have to do. If you're not running a firewall and you don't have IP tables loaded, you'll definitely need the bottom half. You have to turn on IP forwarding. Otherwise, it won't forward packets from the inbound interface to the outbound interface, right? This is highlights the easy way to do it. As far as firewall rules, the only thing you really need is that one line. What I did is I just created a little shell script that you can run. You can free up it in your, if you're running a Debian-based distro, you can free up it in the network interface config, and it will run and set up your firewall rules for you. In this case, the 10.8.0.0, that's just the net block that this is handing out IPs from. So the IP that your client gets will be in that block, essentially. This is the full config, and I bet you can't read that.
Tiny letters.
Yes, very
What do
tiny.
they mean?
We'll step through it a few lines at a time. So you got to set up the local IP address for the Pi. In this case, this is actually the config off my machine at home. You're running in server mode, tunnel mode, UDP 1194. That's the default. Then you have a section where you define the keys for everything. Now, the last line there, the TLS off, you tell it where the key is, and then 0 means that you're expecting incoming HMAC connections.
Yeah, okay.
And 1 means outgoing. So if you set up a config for a user, you have to make sure that's 1, otherwise it won't work properly. Now, I'm treating this all as a client server side, not like 2 sites together, because you can certainly do that. You have to do a few different things, and I'm not going to cover that here. Next thing is, that's the net block that you're actually handing IPs out of, and then this, the ifconfig command, is actually the IP address for the server side of those tunnels. Right? So it's ends up being a one-to-many. Now the way I have it configured here, it'll end up being transparent. The clients cannot ping that the other end of the tunnel. They can ping the outside interface, the Ethernet interface on the physical interface, but not on the other end of the tunnel. Does that make sense? So like if the 10.8.0.1, they wouldn't be able to even see that.
Okay.
It's transparent. So you push DHCP options here, or sorry, DNS options. And I think it only allows you to push 1 DNS server. We found some ways around that, and I think what we ended up doing was actually pushing the IP of the local machine and then having it masquerade DNS from a bunch of other machines. The 4th line there is just a redirect, so that you're not running in split tunnel mode. You guys familiar with that? Right. So instead of just sending traffic destines for that network alone, you're split tunneling. I don't at all like that. There's a lot of vulnerabilities that you open yourself up to if you do that.
So, well, the only times I've had issues with that is if I was trying to route again.
Right.
There's no network inside.
Right. But from a user standpoint, I don't want somebody if you're doing this in a corporate setting, you wouldn't want a user
Visibility to what they're doing.
having a potentially compromised Windows machine doing split tunneling because you open up a vulnerability in your local network by letting it connect to just your network for some things and to the outside world.
Oh, you mean, okay, you're talking the opposite of us.
Yeah, split tunneling means that this way everything gets sent down through it. So one of the big reasons why VPN servers are so popular right now is geolocating, right? You can get, your NBA and NFL and all the different games and crap that are in a blackout by geolocating.
Region lock?
Yeah. The rest of this is the last section here where it says client. I mean, that actually does allow you to connect to other clients that are connected to the VPN server. That actually shouldn't be in there. I thought I had it commented out. The duplicate CN just allows you to use one set of keys if you want, so you can comment that out, and then it requires separate keys for everything. And then the ciphers you use. There's nothing here that really stands out other than it runs as nobody and as group nobody. Originally, there were some problems with this, and this is why they had a hard time porting it originally to Android, is that it had to be rooted for you to run the app. And most people didn't want to root their device to be able to do this. You can have it logged. I mean, it's no big deal. And if you want to know what these things mean, I'm not going to go into it. It tells you where it writes a log file. It writes a status log file, and I think it limits it to 20 lines is what that means. And it just keeps recently connected user information there. And how verbose it is, that's all group one means. Yeah, lots of options that are way beyond scope. Well, let's see where we're at. Yeah, it's still running. Oh, hey, it finished. Wow, that's amazing. Those complete. Now.
One of those dots and pluses look like some kind of secret message.
Yeah, the first time I thought I was a little bit confused many years ago. So, I'm going to show you how. These are just some of the additional steps you want to take, right? I mean, if you're going to run a firewall, like make it readable by root, runnable by root, by root, pre-up it. This is pretty standard stuff. But more interesting is making a mobile config. So, because you actually have a config, like a text file, very much like what's here, in addition to the keys, right? You have to distribute the keys. Well, on a mobile device, you don't give it the separate key files. It doesn't like it in that configuration. They decided not to do it that way. So what they did is have this format. So this is actually one long file. This is just the bottom half of it. And I didn't put the keys in here because they were actually my server keys from home. But you would fill in where it says body of key here. Basically, if we look at one of these, look at, say, so if you look at TA key, for instance, you're basically just cutting and pasting everything that doesn't have an asterisk or a pound sign in front of it, right, into that file sequentially. Doesn't matter what order it's in, because it's, sort of a markup language that they have going on, right?
You're killing me.
This format makes it nice because you can essentially email the user their config. Or what we did was we didn't want to email. We had them download it, right? And it writes it as a file. Use the file manager on your mobile device to pull it into the config or the app. And I have verifiable proof that it actually does work. Well, wait, it would work if I had a wireless connection.
402.
Hang on. 203. Poor John.
402. 345. 5025. 588-2300.
Empire.
I had this all set up with my phone before I had to turn my new set.
Okay.
402
now.
345. 5025.
If you guys want to dick with this, you can. I don't mind. As long as it does connect.
Yellow progress
Waiting
bar.
for now. Keep in mind it's a Raspberry Pi, so it's a little slow.
Fascinating. The progress bar.
It doesn't do anything. The other day it let me down severely. It didn't work at all. And then like 10 minutes later it started working. Maybe it's not gonna work. It worked right before I came here.
Did you fire it
Yeah.
up? Or were you connecting to home?
I'm connected. No, this one's not gonna work. Mostly because I have like a whole lot of different passwords and I don't even know my account, and I'd have to regenerate another client file to myself. But needless to say, that's not gonna work great. It does work. Believe me,
It does or it doesn't work?
it does work. I use
But
it
it
every
doesn't
day.
work.
I use this every day from work because I can check on.
Are you telehoming?
I'm telehoming.
Yeah.
No.
So you've had this Pi running at home
For quite some time.
Quite some time.
Yeah.
And you
And I usually don't have problems.
and it's the only way into your home network is through this Pi.
It's one way into my home network.
You're going through about 2 or 3 different managed devices.
Which, so that's another advantage to this. It actually works quite well for that. It doesn't care. So, more than likely, there's something else going on. We've off and on over the last 2 days, we've had problems with our internet at home. So, who knows what's going on.
Hashtag blame Comcast,
There's
even
a-
though they're not in this part of the country.
There's they're expanding the gigabit Ethernet offering out there in my neighborhood, and the neighbors have jumped on it gangbusters, and I've noticed it in my downstairs
CenturyLink?
suites. Yeah. So questions?
I have a interesting use case.
Yeah.
I have a SNOM 370 phone, and it supports OpenVPN.
Yeah.
So, get that to work. It has to establish, well, let's see, how does it do that? It establishes a connection to the VPN after it downloads a config.
Right.
So you have to have at least a web server that's available, password protected, to bring the file down.
Right.
Get its config, then connect. Then the SIP does its negotiation, and then you get phone calls.
Yep.
On the phone, you get a little phone symbol appears when you're connected that says VPN. We've got like 3 of them that work great.
The folks that actually support this, the OpenVPN guys, they actually have a commercial offering that uses an unreleased, of course, that source code is not released, for downloading the config. It's actually kind of slick. We tried to replicate it building our offering. Although I was able to reverse engineer from a trial version of their how they're doing load balancing with IP tables.
That's cool.
And that's how I ended up figuring that out. Yeah. So they've been promising a multi-threaded version for some time.
That would be a nice thing. Both VPNs all single threaded on. So
Yeah, but like I said, if you want me to, I can dig out the config files or the IP table stuff that I use to round robin. And if you fire up multiple instances, it'll just spread it out over it in shotgun. I mean, it's not ideal. It's not perfect load balancing, but it doesn't do too bad.
Now, Eric, doesn't I just lost my memory. I don't.
Oh, welcome to my neighborhood.
We
The
say
firewall.
PFSense.
PF Sense, that has it built in,
Yeah.
right?
It
Yeah.
has it built in, it's slow, it's got a button that says, send my client files.
Yep.
It's-
There's a couple wrappers that actually work pretty nice for this. Front-ends that'll help manage user keys and things like that. So,
Now, some time ago, I want to say about 5 years ago, Craig and I were trying to do this on GD Word.
I remember helping with that too. I couldn't get to work. Did you guys get to work? here?
No,
No.
we never got to
I lost,
there was
I
a
lost
period
my
of
money.
time where OpenVPN, they were stuffing features into it, and I had a hard time keeping up. The config files were changing rapidly. If you didn't have the incantation just right, it didn't work.
Now, I did get it to work for a corporate sense. Setting it up as a client, this was in
Yeah.
2014. I got it to work as a client to my existing server. And I did all that here, and I shipped the router out to them and had to plug it in their office.
I've had it work as like an end of a PFSense box.
Yeah.
Yeah, for quite a long time I was running a PFSense box, and I ran OpenVPN to our corporate network, and I tunneled all our traffic through.
But not Google's corporate network.
No, to my open. Yeah. And that worked pretty slick. But of course, I was limited by how much bandwidth I had to our office and how much the office had out. So,
Were you running your phone over that too?
yeah, that's why I was doing it, because I was running the thing.
SIP's pretty tolerant over it. It works pretty good from. I've never really had any complaints from people.
Are you running it UDP or TCP?
UDP.
Yeah, because it works way better. Now that being said, I know a guy that was running some sort of weird satellite setup, and he had a bunch of locations where he works for gaming parks, and they had these little satellite devices they drop out. They were fairly low bandwidth, and he would connect to them over using UDP over a satellite connection to pull data off these remote. Yeah.
And it was working?
Yeah, it worked.
Interesting.
I don't know. I scraped this together pretty fast, so I'm sorry about the quality of it.
No,
Actually, you did good. Other than some misspellings, you were beautiful.
Hey man, you're lucky that was all that was wrong. Because I got to the end of this morning, right? And I said, okay, questions. Thank you. Resources. All the resources for a totally different presentation. I could have put a lot more in here, but quite frankly, if you do searches on this, you'll find so much on how to do this.
Stack Overflow.
There's a lot of different configurations you can do.
Sometimes just looking at other people's configs can really help
Oh yeah.
straighten it out. My only issue is always like the push routes. Sometimes that wouldn't exactly work.
Yeah, so we did some of that. I was able to get it to push the routes to me when I was connecting to our office, and it worked right. But it would only work right for some of our net block. So I was trying to get connected to remote sites out in Ashburn or something like that, and I could not get that.
See, that was my next question, because I know there's some people who want to VPN into the office, and then they want to go over the existing site-to-site VPN to one of our colos. It's like, don't make me go through that, please.
Yeah, well, it should do that automatically if they push all their traffic.
If I'm pushing,
If you're not split tunneling,
right,
it should by default use your bandwidth from here.
Okay.
Yeah, that should not be a problem.
as long as I push the routes.
Shouldn't even have to push the routes, because if there's default routes already on your local network to get from here to there,
Yeah.
you use a specific connection, it should already work.
That becomes your gateway. So
Right. It's in every sense they're sitting on your local network, even though you're not using a tap. they're not seeing broadcast traffic. They are still using as though they're connected directly here.
Mhm.
So it should use any routes that are configured in your gateway to get out.
Trying to remember the IP address. Having I need an adult.
So a couple other things that I would recommend you do with this
adult.
is that if you're writing log files and you care about the SD card, the one thing that I did on mine is I stuck a cheap USB drive into it and then moved VAR over to it, things like that. You can do that really easily. That way, if it does go south on you, I mean, it's less recovery. Although it is really easy to back these things up, right? Use D. I think this has got a 8 gig SD
That
card.
is the smallest heat sink I think I ever
Well, I'll be
seen.
darned. Okay.
Yeah.
I guess I never tried it.
Yeah, it should work
Okay.
properly. Yeah, so CPU and then the smaller one's the GPU. Heatsink.
Oh, there's an even
There's
smaller one.
SSH to my desk and SSH out when I'm connected over
Tiny
the
little
VPN, so I guess I don't have to do that from home.
So one of the other projects that I'm working on, and I may do a talk on, is I am actually in the process of building some security cameras out of PIs using the no IR Pi camera. And I prototyped one with a Pi 3, but I'm going to try it with a Pi 0 because I can make a much smaller housing for it. The housing I made for the one that I built, I should have brought it. It's a 3.5 inch Schedule 40 PVC with plexiglass ends that I cut on a laser cutter at work. And then inside it has a little tray, you know, much like what's this mounted to, that slides in, and there's a catch in the front in the plexiglass that I drilled halfway through the plexiglass in the front. There's 2 pins that go into that, and then the rear one goes on, and it holds that board in place. And I tried to get it so that I had threaded rod inside the PVC, so it wouldn't be outside. Next time I'll do that. I couldn't get the alignment right. The laser cutter that I was using, you can't go back and recut holes. And if you've ever drilled a hole in plexiglass without the right bits, you know that what you do is you end up breaking it or drilling a hole in your hand. Yeah, I didn't cut the holes big enough for the threaded rod that I had for some reason. But actually, it works
Measure
pretty
twice
decent.
and cut once.
Yeah, good.
So
Well, actually measure twice, go to the hospital, not at all.
so you're transmitting your camera images over the wireless
No.
then? Or?
No, I have an existing security system, and it all has Cat5 to it, so I'm doing PoE. Put a PoE injector on it. It's all wired. Now, the advantage to the between the Pi 3 or Pi 2 and the Pi 0 is that it has Ethernet. And if you've ever used a Pi and used the camera and tried to use a USB device that is high bandwidth, they don't play well together. They're all in the same bus. So even
So
though the
just
Ethernet
use
is
the
too.
camera or the USB, but not both.
Yeah, I mean, I had problems. So
Learn that
resolution is actually quite good. I'm using the no IR version of the camera, so they work pretty well at night, even without IR backlights and stuff like that. The quality is much better than the system I have now. And I have like, I don't know, half a dozen things kind of sitting around that I've been doing various things with, so I figured, why?
The other advantage you can do too is getting some of the temperature and humidity sensors on
Yeah.
the same units.
So my plan is to actually put a mastiff on my back fence, put a pole up that has a camera and a weather station built around the Pi. So
Cool.
and all of them. And they're very low power. They're cheap. I mean, the Pi 0 is particularly cheap if you can find one, right? It's $5. Oh, camera. So these have a dedicated camera. Oh, actually, it's this one.
There's this, it's like a
How
zip.
you gonna how do you,
Just built onto it?
if you're gonna use a Pi 0,
What?
There's a
What
newer
exactly
version of the
do
Pi
I
Zero.
do?
that
No,
has a
that's
camera.
Oh,
the
it's a-
slot.
it's a
so they-
slot.
It's the ribbon
Right.
cable.
Right.
How do you get
To what?
Right.
What?
Ethernet.
It has a, oh no, I'll have to use a USB dongle, Ethernet, USB,
It's like you use an OTG cable.
like this. Just links this. There's lots of different. I mean, they have special ones made for the Pis. Any of them work though.
Then you price it.
Yeah, I mean, I've got a few of these sitting around. I want to try it with the Zero and see how it works. I don't know that it's going to work because it's a lot lower bandwidth device. I mean, it's all sharing the same bus. It's even worse than the Pis, the Pi 3s. At least with this, I can overclock it if I want to get a really high res image. I can overclock it quite a bit. I've had this one overclocked to 1.5 gigahertz.
What's the regular resolution? Is it 1040 by 1024 by 716?
For the new,
For the IR cut. My
no,
Fox cam is died in my
it goes
garage,
quite a
so-
bit higher than that.
Okay.
The version
Two.
2 is
8
yeah, it's a
megapixel.
5. No, it's an 8. Yeah, it's
Wow.
the old one's a 5. So the new ones are 8.
Okay.
The really cool thing about the no IR one is that although you suffer during the day, you can say
Before you close it up.
during the day you'll get some washout if you don't have a pretty good shield on handling all those things in front of the camera. You get direct sunlight on the lens and
Oh, iris.
blast it, right?
Yeah.
Everywhere I have cameras mounted, though, there's Eve protecting it, so I very rarely get direct sunlight on it. But they really work nice at night. If you have just a little bit of ambient backlight, you can see everything quite well. So
Can you change the lens?
yes, actually, most people don't realize it. I don't think I have one here, but you can refocus these cameras out. If you look at a picture of one, good one. So if you look at this, you can't really see it, but see that's got the protective shipping thing on it. But right below that, see how it's raised up?
Uh-huh.
That's threaded into the body of that. So you can unthread that, and actually you can focus it down to about 1.5 inches.
Okay.
I actually have a project I'm working on that does
Kind of like
that.
a digital microscope.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
So if you thread it, can you take off the IR?
You can completely take the lens out if you want to, but more importantly, you can get all kinds of add-ons for CCTV cameras,
So you get
replacement
different
lenses,
lenses.
that actually just go
different
right
degrees.
over top of this.
Fisheye?
Yeah, you put a fisheye lens on it. You can do all kinds of stuff like that. They have adapters that you can adapt a Canon camera lens to it, right?
Can you not, like, can you put 6 of these together?
Pro Series?
There you go.
Yeah, put one of those. Oh no, my gosh!
See,
I want one of those lenses. And I'm not hooking it up to my phone.
It's a 3D print module.
Oh my God.
it's so that is actually made by a doctor. It's a piece of aluminum that he mills, and he sells that for like $90.
He's gonna see the machine.
What's that?
He's gonna see the machine.
Yeah, apparently. Well, I don't, he designed it, and he probably sends it out to somebody else.
Well, looks like there's a polycarbonate piece too.
Yeah, to the back. So this is a fisheye that's on there. So my plan, I'm building one right now. I'm too cheap to buy a spotting scope. I go shooting, and I don't want to buy a spotting scope. So I'm building a couple of Yagi antennas, and I'm going to have a battery-powered Raspberry Pi down at one end, and I'll have my tablet on the other, and I'll have it run in real time.
I just set a like my tablet back there, and I put my phone next to the target. And you do it that way.
Yeah. The thing is I really want to armor it, but I've talked to the guys, the Eastern Nebraska Gun Club. They are not too cool about me making a steel housing for it that's bullet resistant, because that means it probably will cause the bullet to leave the field. It will ricochet up and possibly leave the field, and they don't like that. So I'll have to sacrifice a pie if somebody decides to shoot it.
I think next time you get out there, I'll remember to serve there too.
So you're going to put a Yagi antenna on the pie.
Yeah, to transmit back to, because it's 600 yards.
Yeah. So where do you connect it on the pie?
No, it'll have to have a wireless.
Are you an
Base
external wireless?
There's a little wireless Wi-Fi dongle that has a screw-on port.
Yeah. We can do that. I happen to have some other
Yeah,
equipment
yeah,
just
there.
laying around that I'm gonna try to
And then, so you're going to get the pie to talk directly to your tablets, so there's not a
It's probably like an RSTP or TSP stream.
Yeah, you can set it up, run a server on there that just blows it to a port. There's a little delay, but I don't care about that. I don't need to see it in real time. I just need to see where the bullet hit. Even if it's 2 seconds or
And
5
so then
seconds
you're on
later.
your tablet, you're going to see the image, or
Yep, we'll have an image of the target. We'll see how that works.
Go down a little bit. Keep going.
November still?
To the left, right there, the
This?
down below one.
This?
Yeah.
the fish near the full sky.
Yeah. So he's modified that for a all sky camera.
There's all kinds of stuff you can do with these.
That's
One
for
of
the
the guys
telescope
that,
over on the right.
uh,
Black.
Yeah.
That one.
One of the guys that my wife works with took the lens, just took the cap off the microscope, cut a hole in it, and put glued a pie cam to it, and then refocused it. And now they have it set up, his little 7-inch LCD touch display sitting next to it, and he's just running it in preview mode all the time.
Mm.
And he doesn't have to constantly, because he has glasses and it drives me nuts to have to go back and forth all the time. So, and he has astigmatism, so the lenses don't correct for it, so it's still fuzzy for him. So.
And he looks at just for reading newspaper
No, he's using it for looking at specimens
through a microscope.
through a microscope. Yeah. He works in the back in the tissue lab, so they're looking at tissue samples all day. There's all kinds of weird things you can do. I love it. I wish I had more time to work on it. So one of the interesting things I ran into, anybody who works with fiber optics, have you ever had to see if a fiber is shooting light or not? And you can,
Yeah, shot flash all through.
well, I'm talking about if it's lit with the laser. So you can use one of these nifty little things, right? It's an IR card. It's charges off the light, and then when you shine 850, I think it goes from 700 nanometers to 1600 nanometers, right? It fluoresces, so you can see the fiber shooting from a source. Typically, 850s multi-mode, right? 850 is pretty visible to the camera in your cell phone.
I was gonna say, because I think remote controls, you can test that too. Now.
Right.
You don't have to have those.
So one of the ways that at work, sometimes we check to see if we don't have that. We'll shine it out the camera because we're not working with regular LC fiber, we're MPO fibers. Anybody familiar with what an MPO connector looks like?
It's that little square.
There we go. So MPO looks like that.
Oh, yeah. Good.
And actually between those two pins, there are 12 fibers. And MPO 12 is the standard. You may have only 4 channels lit, and you can
There's an
use your
example on the top right.
yeah. So if you look at that, it shows so this is a 12 and a 24.
Okay.
Right.
So
This shows
four
that
colors of four.
this
of
probably
each.
won't blow up properly, right? It's not going to even be in here. Well, of course not that we need to get the bottom row is a transmit, top row is
Just on view image, you should get it there.
yeah.
Not view
That
page.
was music page.
Oh, sorry.
I had those that go from the Cisco switch to these cassettes.
Now you,
Yeah.
Yeah.
now you can expand it.
So if you look at that,
Oh, yeah.
Well, imagine
Bunch of teeny tiny
you
wires.
use your lovely little IR card. Well, yeah, I have light, but I don't know which channel's lit or how many. So I use your phone. Well, I'm building a little thing, uses a Pi and a Pi cam. That's how I know that they focus to like this. Because it'll show up 850 nanometer, no problem. It works with 1310, 1330. I haven't tested it here now. So, because they took the IR filter out of the camera, it makes a big difference.
That's cool. Never have to look through that thing again.
Yeah, well, there's that too, right?
Remind yourself.
In most machine rooms, you're probably safe, but the quantity of gear that we work around, there's always a concern that how much laser light is flying about. We have thousands and thousands of optics. It might be lit, it might not be. Right? Did they turn it off? I don't know.
Can't throw a bunch of dust in the room, turn the lights down, and Catherine Zeta-Jones is in your server center. Or...
It'd be really cool if they actually make glasses, but they don't make glasses that allow you to see infrared light. They make headsets that are night vision goggles that might, what they do make are glasses that protect you from infrared. That's all, unfortunately.
Yeah, but those. What frequency is?
850, well, 600 up to about 1600 nanometers.
What's red? What is red? Red
650.
visible red.
Yeah, 650. That's the high end, isn't it? Yeah. I mean, there used to be some multimode optics that ran right around 625, but most of it's 850 now. Because the LEDs are horribly cheap for that. And the fiber that they developed is, they originally developed fiber is actually made for 850 nanometer, optimized for that. And there's some water peaks now that they're finding that interfere quite heavily with 1310. They work okay around 1600, but there's a water absorption peak in a lot of the older fibers in the ground. So, yeah.
Nice. Interesting.
Yeah,
So they keep the fiber that's there, and they just change the light.
you have to change your optics a little bit. Yeah. Actually, that was a question I was getting. You want to, or we still stop it?
Okay.
Did I have a question?
Well, thanks everybody. 3,